team in terms of what we're looking at as a baseline. So it's a cross-purpose within ULCC. It's not just us within support that are involved. What I'm going to talk about today is basically a little bit about the kind of things that actually we do quite a lot in terms of giving you the code, but there's a lot more else involved within the upgrade process in terms of internally about how you're going to manage your upgrade path, whether or not you're going to choose to upgrade this year, what kind of things you need to consider, and how we're going to support you this year. It's just a couple of points here. We will be moving to 2.6.2 this year. If you haven't been involved, in fact, if I ask you, who's actually upgraded last year in terms of customers, because I know there's quite a few new customers here, who's gone through our upgrade process last year? So split half and half split, actually. There's a few people that haven't. If you don't already know, we actually skip a version release for Moodle, because Moodle does 2 major release cycles a year. And we basically work with 1 version a year because in terms of the development input, making sure that your services are robust, they perform well. In terms of that development input, we try to work with 1 version release, and that's always the one that's released in November, December. They do 2 cycles for the one in summer, which is June, which is too late really in terms of when you're looking to upgrade within the summer period, and they do November, December. So we've gone from 2.4, which was our upgrade last year, to 2.6 this year. We're moving away from using a very vanilla 2.4 or 2.6 version of Moodle and actually looking at including all of our developments and plugins this time. So we're going for a fully Git managed doc route. That probably means nothing to half of the, but basically that means we're looking at upgrading to a version of Moodle that has everything that we already install for you. So things like plugins, developments that we've done for ULCC for other customers. So upgrading a much larger subset of tools in your Moodle site. What we used to do was upgrade against a vanilla doc route, so a release from Moodle that says 2.6.2, out the box basically. And then we used to add all of the additional developments and plugins. What we're doing now in terms of managing our upgrades is working with the whole thing all at once and upgrading all at once to that. And so what you'll end up is getting a few more developments this time, a few more plugins that you may not have had. So anybody that has quite a vanilla site at the moment may get some more tools in there. And we're obviously going to send you all of these details. We're currently still testing the upgrade process and all the plugins, what works, what doesn't work, because we have not only our developments, but we have third-party contributed plugins from proprietary companies like Blackboard. We also have them from other developers, other sites, ones that have gone through, and we're testing that they work. And I think we've done about 14 sites across all of our, at the moment, where we've upgraded, I think I upgraded sites a couple of days ago in terms of actually looking at how. So we're looking at we're not doing it in isolation, we're looking at real services in terms of our upgrade processes, what's working, in terms of modelling out our process. It's really important that you tell us what you're doing over the summer in terms of plans, because we can be offering, and I'll be giving dates on the upgrade in the next couple of slides, but it also fitting around your other plans that you've got going on in the summer, because I understand within the university, summer becomes, right, what we're going to push out, what developments, we might be changing our registry system, we might be changing our student management system. So it's really useful for us to have that dialogue from now on in terms of what your plans are over the summer. And also deciding when, if you choose to upgrade, when you're going to be doing your end of year planning. You may want to do that before your upgrade, you may want to do that after your upgrade, depending on your planning. And that will have some impact of when you choose to do your upgrade with the ULCC. What's going to be making its way in for the next academic year. I'm sure you're already started to look at that internally, but you may also, it's a chance for you to audit your site, remove old courses, site files, things like that, in preparation for when you're ready to start going for the upgrade. Now, with 2.4 and 2.6, we will be sending information on what's in terms of, you know, what are the new features, what are the bug fixes for this version release. However, it is an opportunity for you to start looking at, you know, do you need to have a training plan? Is it going to affect your site? This slide isn't particularly very good, but I've just picked out one of the things in terms of the HTML editor. You know, actually, there's been quite a lot of feedback, you know, in terms of the way that it's changed from 2.4 and whether or not that's actually, you can't see it on here, but hopefully when you see the slides. So there's little things in terms of usability, you know, that will change, that you know, whether or not you need to start looking at training plans internally. And obviously we'll help you with that and guide you in that, but that is something internally you will need to look at. So how are we going to support you? People that upgraded last year, and we're probably aware that we make a demo site available, which will actually be a replication, even more so this year, of the actual build release that we'll be offering you. So that will have all the plugins, all of the themes that we currently support, and that will have all the support material. It will have the current plugin list in terms of what's supported for 2.6. If there is any plugins that haven't made it, that aren't working at this point in terms of our testing, then we will mark those that they have not passed our testing, and they may well make it into further releases, or they may make it in before the summer when you're likely to upgrade, but we will list anything that's failed our testing through there. Just to sort of reassure you, we haven't actually come across anything major. I think the only one is Open University, one of the Open University stuff so far. We will actually officially be starting our upgrade schedule from the 28th of April, and that, as per last year, we'll be sending out an email detailing the instructions about how to book your upgrade slots, more information about the demo sites, and basically from then on we'll probably be communicating to you on a regular basis about the upgrades. We tend to finish our upgrades around the 7th of August because we like to leave a few weeks before the beginning of term for you guys in terms of bedding in, and also because a lot of people tend to do end of year rollover. You know, they tend to setting up courses, so it's kind of too late in the diary for most. I mean, please tell me if that's not the case, but that seems to normally work out in terms of when people are requesting upgrades. It's the same process as last year. So for people that have actually been involved with the upgrades last year, it will probably mean something to you. If you're new, you will get more information when we release the demo site and the instructions. Essentially, what we do is offer you an upgrade behind the scenes. So your current site goes into a read-only state, so your staff and students can access material, they can carry on, they can't edit, they can't update material, but they have access to the site. And there is more information about what read-only means, and that will be on the demo site as it was last year. And then we're running a upgrade in the background, and then we switch over, and then your new site becomes available. So it means that you tend to have less downtime for your end users, normally about half an hour when we switch DNS over in terms of the sites. So I've got a lot of good feedback back from people last year about the read-only solution, and we're always trying to adapt our processes, so please let me know if that's not the case, or if there's anything that we can look at. We will have a step-by-step guide on our demo site. Oh, and I've lost half of my slides. They're not all there. Yeah, so yeah, that's it. So I'll carry on without the slides. There were a few more slides, apologies. Upgrades will be offered Monday to Thursday. So last year we offered them every day, Monday to Thursday, and they're bookable slots. When we send out the email, you can book those in. Now, we are doing a lot of testing at the moment, and obviously most upgrades we would want to do within a day. So you'll be in a read-only state for a day, by the end of the day you'll be switching over. Now that is very dependent on the size of your site in terms of the size of the database, and that's something that once we offer out the dates for upgrade, we'll probably be contacting you separately about, you know, whether or not it would be 1 or 2 days. But I think given that we're going from 2.4 to 2.6, there's no major changes. give you as much information as possible. Apologies because I can't remember what I put on my other slides, but it's probably a good opportunity for you to ask me some questions about what we're currently doing. It is always a bit of a strange thing within HE because you do have your own internal sort of processes and what you can fit in terms of your upgrade schedule with your curriculum departments in terms of exam, and just generally the summer's always, you know, where you're trying to organise that. But essentially we're quite happy already with the upgrade process, and what we're doing is streamlining it so that we have a master build release that will enable us to do much quicker updates in the future. So that's one of the major changes that we're working towards. I'll open the floor to lots of questions because I imagine there's quite a few questions.
If you've got a question, I'm going to attempt to reiterate it back to those.
If you want to upgrade, and we've got an internal discussion at the moment, perhaps for Christmas, does that mean you have to, would it still be 2.6?
It would be
Wait,
2.
hold on. The question was about after the 7th of August, which is the cut-off for upgrades to 2.6. If an institution wants to do another upgrade, say in December, would that still be 2.6?
It would be. If I explain the reasoning behind that, is because we only work with one major release cycle. Essentially, it does take a time to kind of test it and to feel okay with what we've got in terms of our own developments, but not also with the community to catch up, because Moodle may release 2.6, but you know, OU may not update their plugin for 3 or 4 months. So we tend to basically start testing as soon as, I think it's November now that they release the winter major release cycle, and it does take, you know, 2 to 3 months for us to be, one, comfortable with the build release, get to an increment. So we would never go with 2.6.1 or 2.6.0, so we'd wait till there's been more bug fixes, you know, it's a stable release in terms of Moodle. So yeah, we would probably be working with 2.6 until probably January, February, and then we'd normally tend to have a gap between that. But if there is something that you're looking at, then you just need to talk to me and register your interest that it doesn't really fit inside of the normal time that we offer upgrades.
Okay. Any other questions about the upgrade from in the room? Doesn't look like it. Richard, anyone? No?
Oh, I'm surprised.
Everyone is delighted and happy, I guess.
I'm surprised because there is a lot of information and I can't really talk about it here one-on-one. It will be a lot of information, and we'll probably be putting it on the demo site, we'll probably be putting it on the blog, you know, various bits. But the main thing is getting comfortable with that release. And so the 9th of April is when our demo site will be available for you to have a play around with, have a look at.
And so there are quite a few hands that went up who haven't been through the upgrade before, and so we did it last year. I think we did it the year before as well. But having our sites in read only was excellent because we had some courses that had just started, so we knew that they would at least have access to something before it changed. The demo site was useful. I don't know if there's any feedback anyone else wants to provide for anyone about to go through this. Anything?
I mean, I know that a lot. I mean, again, our standard upgrade process is basically we upgrade you, but a lot of people like to see visibility of their upgraded site beforehand, and I think if that's the case, then you just need to, again, come talk to me or send me an email. What I didn't put on there is that we do have a Moodle upgrades address, and again, when we send out the email, it will give you all the details about how to contact us in terms of organising everything.
I've just got something actually that you've told me, Emily, which is once you've done the upgrade, the requirements that you have of us is that you need us to be on site and there to mock up.
That's one of the things. Yeah, it is a two-way street. You know, we can do the upgrade, but because we connect to a lot of external systems, and we may well be moving you from one host to another, there is the input from the teams at the institution, and all of those information in terms of, you know, checking that you can still, you know, FTP to the host, all of those kind of things will be in the documentation and the email.
How many versions of Moodle are you going to support in the future?
How many versions of Moodle are you going to support in the future?
That's a good question. We would hope that we would get everybody onto the latest release, and we would always want to have everybody on the latest release, or if at a push the release behind. I don't think you would want to go any further than that for security, for just you straight away. But we obviously work with you to kind of make sure that it's done in a time that suits you. Going forward, because we'll be moving to a much more using GitHub as our code repository, we should be able to model to, and I'm sure Dave's going to talk about this in terms of the Bloom services, we'll be in a much better position to offer incremental quarterly release cycles where it's going to be much easier to update code, so bug fixes, hot fixes, things like that, which at the moment we have to do slightly manually. Is that all right?
Any other questions?
Come talk to me individually if you want to find out.
You're going to hang around for the rest of the afternoon, right? So excellent. Okay, brilliant. And finally, then Frank.
Perfect, me, my turn. One thing. So that's me, Frank. Most of you know me. I'm marketing manager, work a lot with Sarah, I help set up the user group, because I think it's quite important that we sort of talk to you and share what we do. One of the things which comes off part of the sharing bit is we had a little sort of feedback group discussion last time. And there was a few points which were raised which we couldn't answer straight away, but we said we're going to get back to you, which Sarah kindly reminded me of. So I just want to quickly run through a few of the questions that were raised, which we couldn't answer just before Christmas. One of the things you guys wanted to know was questions about acceptable plugin list. We circulated a list of plugins that are sort of approved at the moment. It's also available on the Gistmail list for you to download. And to some extent, I'm going to pass this on to Dave because as we roll out the new Bloom service, and Emily just referred to it a couple of times, it isn't so much a question of which plugin can I have, but here's a whole chunk of plugins which we approved, and it comes with it sort of out of the box, for lack of better expression. And it's up to you to use them and activate them, enable them or disable them. There's also some information on the L blog, so we can sort of reshare that with you later so you can have a read. It's quite a long blog post with attachments and documents, so it's a lot to read. There's also some information on the tables, and I think the remote guys can download it from the webinar stream. So it's all there for you to digest. We know it's a bit much to take in. Another question that came through last time was about where am I? Again, we've put information about that on the blog. So the idea is the Gistmail list is a closed list for you to discuss, for us to communicate with you and vice versa. Just as a reminder, we are happy for 10, 20, 30 people from your institution to sign up to that, as long as they have any sort of dealings with Moodle. In terms of the actual user groups, just to keep numbers manageable for us, we're going to restrict it for 2 people from each institution. But again, as part of the new packages we introduce and some of the support packages we offer, there is an increase for you if you think you want to have more people come and attend, and if you think that's useful. The other thing, again, sort of about rollouts and plugins, Emily covered most of that just now, and also Dave will cover some of that in the Bloom service, and again, that's in your packages. And last but not least, there was a question about stats, to get stats from across the Ulcc user base, because obviously we host 450 institutions and have 3 million registered users. This is something we're looking at. We actually, I don't know if many of you know, there's a big conference going on in Brighton tomorrow until Friday called UCISA. We're actually meeting with a company to sort of look into how we can make use of the data we collect and make it a bit more accessible and actually start interrogating that and maybe seeing trends, seeing things that work and don't work. So that's very early stages, but we're doing something with that. And I think that was all the sort of open questions we had. If you have anything now or later, let us know, email the lists. You know, it's all for you to ask us and us hopefully being able to provide some answers, I think. Yeah? Anything remote? No? Clifton, your turn. You had to sit at the back, hadn't you? Just use the cursor.
Let's step back and forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Left and right.
Right. First of all, when Richard asked me to come and sort of show what Greenwich do, and then I saw the schedule and it had showcase, which seemed to imply to me that we were doing something fantastic and new and innovative with Moodle, which we haven't. So what I thought it was, and I'm a member of sort of several user groups, you'll see why in a second, is basically show what we do. And the idea being, if I show you what we do, you might share a bit what you do with Moodle. We've got, and the other thing is, we'll show in a second. Hold on. Right.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Okay.
I did get instruction and I forgot. All right, let's see if I can remember how to do this. Oh, store.
Okay. We'll put the slides out. The team that I look after is called Web Services Team within Greenwich.
There we go. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the team I look after, and that looks after Moodle within Greenwich and several other things I'll show you in a second, called the Web Services Team. And the team's been in place in sort of various sort of forms about 6-7 years ago, 6-7 years now, and basically came together with a small team looking after, about 2 people looking after Moodle about 6 years ago. We then decided to implement a portal called Luminous, and I was brought in to project manage that. I was previously an academic, so I was brought in to project manage the launch of our portal. And then the great decision was made that there should be sort of synergies. There's a logic of having a team that looks after our library management system, our portal, and Moodle all in one group. Then I was seduced to join the dark side. And we were called a Web Services Team. And one of the things hopefully you'll help is we're very clear that Web Services Team isn't the right name for what we do anymore. It hasn't been for ages, but we can't come up with a better title. If anybody has a great idea for what we should be called, please let me know. So we're based at the lovely Royal Naval College over in Greenwich, and that's the team. So there's, including me, there are 6 people. So again, what I'd like to understand is, within your organisations, how big are the teams that look after Moodle? 1, so I can't say we're under-resourced. 2. Okay, so I can't. So that's why nobody listens to me when I say we're under-resourced. Having said that, we don't necessarily look after Moodle. Okay, so the team is responsible for looking after our portal, another version of our portal, which is an applicant portal, Moodle, our library management system, ePortfolio, PebblePad, Turnitin, and WordPress. And I've put those are our current systems that we look after. I'm also being tasked with looking at Ulcc Capture, doing some work on SharePoint. CRM is going to be within my team. So when we start adding all those in, I think I've got a reasonable case for arguing that we might be under-resourced, and I think we are going to get a few more people. So you can see vaguely why we're called web services, because they're all sort of web-based systems. There's a logic for having them in one team. If nothing else, it stops everybody arguing because they're all in all the systems in one team. So we've got something to gain by making sure they all work together. So that's the sort of team. And we don't do coding. It's sort of training, vendor management, updates, second line support, sort of low level training material. That team, we're not learning technologists. When we first started out, I mean, I probably had a vague interest in being a learning technologist and some of the pedagogical issues around Moodle. And still, like a chef, if you don't eat your food, how do you know what it tastes like? So I still keep an interest on the pedagogical side of Moodle and e-learning and whatever. But none of the team are learning technologists. And to enable us to actually manage the sort of workload of the team, we kept a very strict sort of demarcation. We'll do that sort of training. But if you want to actually start to develop the use of Moodle in your courses, then I keep a very sort of strict demarcation line. Go and speak to our learning technologists. Otherwise, just wouldn't be able to get anything done. We moved to Moodle on the timeline that I'll show a little later on. So we moved in 2011. Those are the key things that we wanted to achieve by the sort of move to Moodle. Like lots of institutions, there were, before we went to Moodle, there was a pocket of use in Moodle. We were on WebCT. Our computing school have got a thing called TeachMat, which they still have, but the actual VLE type bits they've turned off. Our engineering school also had something else, and our education school had something called Lotus Notes. So basically, again, which my understanding is not that different from other institutions. But the key thing we wanted to do is go through a process where everybody could basically throw their 2 pennies worth in, say what they think, have their moan, but then come to an agreed position on what we wanted to do with the VLE. And it wasn't automatically going to be Moodle. We looked at all the other ones that we looked at, Blackboard, got the Desire to Learn, and various others. But the consensus was that we should go for Moodle. We wanted to see more courses using it, improved use to support teaching, learning support and administration courses. How you determine whether or not there's been improved use for learning and teaching is my big issue. I remember the last meeting I asked, Frank alluded to it, what are people doing with Moodle? And one of the reasons for coming to Ulcc is that obviously with that number of customers, we should be able to benchmark ourselves and say, well, you know, X percentage of our courses are just using the repository. Are we, you know, top 10% or bottom 10%, or are we just in the middle? And at the moment, it's incredibly difficult to actually go in. We can see logs, we can see what people are using, but whether or not that's good or bad use of a VLE is, I think, is a completely different thing. It's very much a qualitative thing. Why Moodle? And I have no problems in putting costs as number one. Relative to Blackboard, for us, the sort of total cost of ownership is certainly cheap. And I still think, even with Ulcc's increased costs, we still think it's in terms of the total cost of ownership, it's still a better deal than for Blackboard or any others. Brilliant. Just in case, unknown. Right. Ability to develop independently of the vendor. And one of the frustrations people had with, actually for us it was brilliant. The fact that we couldn't do anything with Blackboard meant our workload was reduced. People had no expectations to do anything. On the other side, whilst we haven't done that much with Moodle, I'll talk about one of the projects we did do. One of the attractions and one of the dangers, especially people like our computing school and other groups that have got technical skills, they see Moodle as an open source product. In theory, they should be able to dive in, play about and do whatever they want. So another attraction for us of going with Ulcc was that we can say, actually, it's slightly at arm's length to us. There will be processes, you can't just go in and control that. So we can use Ulcc to a certain extent as an excuse for basically trying to control sort of developments in there. Ability to integrate with other systems, hopefully we'll have to be able to, and again, Princeton's in the UK community. One of the, and again, I'd be interested to hear your sort of feedback. When we first looked at Moodle and we looked at other sort of open source systems, there was this idea that it's open source, there's a huge, big, friendly community out there. If you have a problem, you just go onto Moodle.org or whatever, and all these people come rushing forward to help. Now, we've had a couple of instances, nothing too major, where we've actually gone onto that, and it hasn't really worked. So hopefully, one of the other reasons we go for ULCC is that we're part of a group where if we have an issue, the odds are that somebody else would have had it and should be able to share. But again, my experience, I don't think, and I don't blame ULCC for it, I suspect because we're all incredibly busy, that for us I don't think it's really worked out. And that's one of the things that I'd expect, and also I get from other user groups, for instance, in terms of the Luminous user group, that in terms of the portal, every year, at least once a month somebody's ringing up, or I'm ringing somebody else up for an idea of how they've done things, and that works quite well, because we haven't got to the point yet where students are choosing one institution versus the other in terms of what, their Moodle or their portal implementation. Term project timeline, probably can't read all the dates there. One of the things I think we did do well in terms of rolling out Moodle is we spent a year, 3/4 of a year, working with different teams within the university about what were their issues with Blackboard, what we were looking for Moodle, and actually developing a sort of network of sort of champions. And given the, having such a small team and several systems, there's no way we could have actually try and roll this out centrally. It's been very much, the phrase that I use is sort of subsidiarity. If I can push functionality or control of anything out to our schools or faculties, I'll do it very, very quickly. So basically it reduces our workload and enables us to focus on things I think are important. We went live in September 2011 with Moodle 2.2, which we'll probably skip rapidly over. But what was good was that the use of the VLE has gone up significantly, and generally people do like Moodle. All the things that we've read in the literature and heard from other clients who say on Moodle prove to be true. Students find it easy to use, staff find it easy to use. Whether or not they're doing anything particularly different with it than they were with Blackboard, I have big question marks on. But at least they find it easy to do what they've always done. Right, so what next? So we've had Moodle for sort of 3 years. We're on 2.4 and updated last July, and again that went down really well. I think it's a really smooth process. And the reason for putting that up is one of the things we're looking for from ULCC and from the community is some sort of idea as to what should the VLE be in future. What are the new developments? In terms of service that ULC provides us, in terms of a technical hosting infrastructure, I think we're quite confident, and our technical team, I work in servers and all managing that sort of stuff, we can do. What we're looking for from ULCC is the actual technical knowledge of Moodle itself in terms of developments, new plugins, new ways of using it, and that's what we're looking for. I mean, the dreaded Moodle rooms term was mentioned for the first time, which I was quite surprised at the last meeting. And obviously, I keep a nosy idea on what Middlesex are doing and what Moodle rooms are doing. But I quite like that model, that they're, and it sounds a bit like what you're trying to do in terms of future release, but that sort of idea of developing things that are outside of the sort of core vanilla version of Moodle, and that's what we provide to a client. That's the sort of service that we're looking for, and that we feel actually provides additional value as opposed to just the sort of normal hosting thing. the questions I've got there came from a discussion we've been having amongst the portal group. In terms of our users, staff and students, what do they want next? And think about e-learning, and I've moved away from the sort of learning technologies stuff and the pedagogical side of things. But the thing that always comes through to me from all the literature I've read over the years that keeps coming up, what staff and certainly students want is consistent use of the tools. And for my take, in terms of moving sort of use of VLEs and e-learning forward, it's not necessarily about the technology anymore. It's how do you get academics and course leaders to use them in a creative and interesting way. Luckily, that's not my problem anymore, thank God. Yeah, but that, in terms for me, is not really a technological issue. But in terms of what we do now, I think these are sort of reasonably things that most of us could how great it is. The only thing people remember is when it went down. So it's got to be reliable. You know, again, obviously mobile. We'll look at single sign-on. We'll look at our portal in a second. I put the ability to interact with other members of the university community. We've got a learning strategy called Greenwich Connect, which I'll cover a little bit. But at the heart of that is this idea that you know, effective learning is social. One of the things that I should have put on there is the ability to interact with people outside of the university walls. So, you know, one of the criticisms of VLEs over the years is the sort of walled garden argument. And I'm not quite sure how we get over that with all security implications, data protection and whatever. But you know, one of the things we're looking about is how do we enable students and staff that are using the VLE and other systems to also interact with colleagues outside of the university. Alerts, obviously stuff with mobile, consistent interface, so there's nothing we haven't cracked that we're going to look at. Other than just clicking a link in a sort of meaningful way, which I don't think these things are sort of issues that we've cracked, but I think they're things that we're going to need to address fairly quickly. That slide, hopefully you can read it. Because of the work I do, and the team does in terms of portals, I spend a lot of time reading, or a lot of times, particularly at the moment, we're reviewing what we do in terms of our portal. And when I looked at that slide again, and I suddenly thought, actually, if you think about it, that's talking about intranets or portals. If you think about that in terms of a VLE, basically, you think of Moodle, Blackboard, all of them, increasingly, as I can see, basically being a place for other systems to plug in. So, you know, you've got document management, social networks, instant messaging. In terms of our portal, we've got some of that. The next version will probably have more of that. But if you can see lots of those activities are already going on in Moodle. So, you know, one of the arguments we have in terms of portals is basically we just need a web page where all they can single sign on and basically get to all these services. In terms of a VLE, is it much more? You know, they need to get to their slides, you know, the repository bit. They need some way of actually communicating between themselves and other members of staff. Yeah, so you could get any sort of blog or, you know, notice board onto that. Yeah, then use web conferencing, so we're going to be plugging in Adobe Connect in, or we could plug in one of the other ones in. So for me, there's huge parallels in terms of the way those sort of systems are evolving. Sort of a collaborative space in the portal. We've got collaborative spaces in Moodle. We've got instant messaging type functionality that's going to be coming into our portal. We've got that sort of stuff in Moodle, or not great, but it should improve. So which one do we direct staff and students to use? quick thing about Greenwich Connect, which I mentioned earlier. Greenwich Connect is sort of university's sort of recently launched or title for its sort of e-learning strategy. And again, for the guys that from the teaching and learning side that are leading this, for them it's all about collaboration, social learning, and building relationships. Now, which I say, great, motherhood and apple pie, all for it. The question that we're struggling with is how do we translate that into what it means in terms of VLE? A VLE is a set of tools. Whether people decide to use them in a socially collaborative, etc., way isn't going to be determined by me. It's going to be determined by the teaching and learning team. So there's a tension there, and again, I know from speaking to colleagues in other institutions, there's also a tension in other universities between the people like me that are having to manage the systems and the pedagogists on the teaching and learning side. I can provide a set of tools, and we can provide basically any tool they want. How they actually use them, again, and we'll change them in any way they want. But it's quite easy, I think, for people to blame the tools again and again and again, when really it's because people aren't confident or know how to use them or prepared to experiment. Okay, and how have we done? So we've had, it's our third year in terms of having Moodle in place. So in terms of, one of the objectives we set earlier on, in terms of the use of them, we've, I think quite a commendable increase in usage. In terms of, course, our help desk, which is like one sort of proxy measure I use to see whether or not people are finding it easy to use. Clear improvements. In terms of the way we manage the projects, our schools certainly don't see it as they possibly do other systems as a centrally owned system that's imposed on them. It's something that they manage, and my job is to ensure that they try and manage it and make it easy for them to manage in terms of their teaching and learning. So that's happened. The last sort of point there is a recent sort of internal from my internal students survey. Now, 81%, so 19% says something other than that. Now, again, in terms of being part of sort of Ulcc Moodle community, is that good or bad? Have you done similar surveys? Is 81% terrible? These 200 or whatever it is number of customers. We're top 10%, bottom 10%, or middle of the pack, and that's the sort of added value I'd expect to get from this sort of community. Okay, that's me over. Any questions? Oh, I was going to show you the portal quickly. Have I got time? Yeah.
Just log in first. That's the student.
Okay.
So do you think we can do about the heating in here with the new LCD? A little chilly. No. Thought I'd say
Right.
something.
They get to the sort of navigate to this page, log in. He said, it better work. Doesn't look great on this thing. The tab that you've got on there, the first one is if you're an applicant, you accepted a place at Greenwich, you just get that. You get sent your login details, and you log in. You just get the new applicants. You're getting slightly strange view because it's my sort of my layout. You then get pre-arrival guides, preparing for Greenwich, sort your accommodation out, announcements and new fees. So that's the applicants portal. The rest of it going from the home tab is what staff gets, and students get a slightly different version. So in terms of announcements, Google search, what's on, university fees, major projects, staff search and all that sort of stuff. And then the rest of the tabs across here are relatively, I think, self-explanatory. So all the stuff to do if you're a researcher or a research student on the research tab, or staff development activities on staff development tab, stuff like supported accommodation and travel and all that sort of stuff, library and IT. But in terms of Moodle, they then go to students, and on that tab you've got the student record system, which is banner over in the corner, for study skills, exam papers, exam timetable and exam timetable up there. And to actually get into Moodle, they click on this link. And let's navigate from there. So let's say we did at one point do the sort of major development we did, because I don't teach, I'm still linked to a few courses in the business school. So it's very much, other than slight changes of the banner and putting our logo on, we've left Moodle very much as it is. And again, there's sort of a bit of a discussion internally as to whether or not we should invest more time in terms of changing the look and feel of Moodle. And so far, in terms of priorities, it's not winning out. But again, we'll see what happens there. The one development which we did do was to integrate Moodle with our timetable system. And what that enabled students to do, it was basically at the start of the academic year, go in and from their Moodle course, basically choose what tutorial they wanted to go to. We had a few teething problems with it, but essentially it worked. And then we decided actually what they really wanted their timetables before they actually turned up at the start of the year. So we discontinued that sort of integration. So as it is at the moment, it's very much out of the box. We are looking at sort of various sort of plugins and developments that we can. I'm not entirely convinced that we give them more tools that they're going to be using, or just by giving them more tools, it's going to be more social or collaborative. That's the Greenwich environment. Any questions?
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Any virtual questions, Richard? No? Yes? Are there any questions?
Don't be silly, Sarah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clifton. Great, okay, shall we move swiftly on then? We're doing really well for time. Might all get out of here earlier. Dave, you're going to talk to us about service definitions.
Let's go back a bit. Okay. Okay. For those who don't know me, I'm Dave Kenworthy, Head of Software Services. So I guess I'm accountable for the delivery of these services. Hence, one of the areas I'm very interested in and have been engrossed in for the last 6 months or more is what are the services that we deliver to you. It's been alluded to by various people, but we're undergoing quite a lot of work in redefining the services that we offer with the primary objective of providing clarity on what those services are so that you can choose the right services for you. At the last user group, John Hilton, my colleague, talked a bit more about the sort of account management and business relationships and so on, and how that was going to be professionalised, I guess, for want of a better word. We did talk briefly about the programme of service definitions to back that up, and we've communicated on the blog in some detail about some of those services. I'm conscious there's a lot of detail to take in, and there's probably questions ranging from at the fine level of detail right up to what's the thinking behind this whole thing. So I thought it'd be worth going through some of the principles behind the service definitions that we're working on, so that perhaps you can also, where you have a question, if you understand the principle behind what we're doing, you may well be able to work out the answer that's the principle we're following in all of these. So what I would, you've got some handouts that have probably the most important, which might be worth referring to as I go through this, is the first page, which is there's a table in there of a proposed list of services and a one-line description of each one. So Bloom is the name we have been using, and it's starting to stick, so don't be too surprised if that ends up being the name that we use, but it's a number of things. And firstly, it is a software product. So Emily talked about a build with all of the plugins that we like and all of the enhancements that we've added and so on and so forth. It's a piece of software, a lump of code that does more than Moodle, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But it is also a service. The Bloom service will be the default service that we offer to all of what we'd currently call our Moodle customers. We want to talk our Bloom customers. So a service that meets the needs of all. And this is where it gets slightly more complicated. It's also a range of services. So again, I'll talk about this in more detail, but we've broken it down into, it's actually 40 services at the moment, where Bloom is the core that everybody will have, and the rest is a menu for you to pick and choose how far you want to take Moodle and in which direction you want to take it. So you'll hear Bloom referring to all three of those things. The Bloom software itself is, as we've talked about, Moodle plus the best of the third-party and community plugins that are out there, our range of plugin enhancements, and we've done plenty already, but we want to do more, and your plugins. And there are caveats to that, as you might imagine, and we can talk about that. But between us, we want to create something that is not just Moodle, it's Moodle that does more and it suits the UK HE and FE community. So, but it will be, Bloom will be one thing. There will be Bloom that everybody has, and it's the same product. We will continue to enhance it on our own schedule. I currently propose to be quarterly, but it will change and evolve. New plugins will be added, old defunct ones will be removed, changed, dated, and so on. The Bloom service, more interestingly, is, and this is where I go into the principles behind it, it's a service rather than servers. Some of you may have come across situations where there is a difficulty in, have you bought a particular amount of hardware with a particular lump of software on it, or have you bought a service that should perform in a particular way? We're very much erring on the side of it should be a service and you understand how it will perform, and we do whatever's necessary to ensure it continues to perform. And by perform, I don't just mean speed, I mean does all the things that it should do. It's supported to an extent of your choosing. So a principle that I think I've concluded is no longer valid is that the assumption had been that support increased with size of institution. The bigger the institutions paid more and got more support as a result. I think the reality is actually quite different. We have some very large institutions who are actually very self-sufficient. They tick over, we don't hear from them very often, and they're quite happy. On the flip side, we have some very, very small institutions who require, almost inversely, because they are small, they don't have the expertise and the experience service itself. So you can, in conjunction with us, decide what level of support you want over and above the standard. The Bloom service is able to grow with you. Again, similar earlier thoughts on service definitions talked about the higher the level of service, the more features and options and more things you were allowed to do. Again, that model we've abandoned. All of the services and the options that you can choose from regardless of your scale. There will be price for each of those services and it's up to you, but the freedom is there to choose the service that suit you. This also enables the trend which is for institutions who start small with a pilot perhaps, one faculty, and gradually expand to institution-wide and possibly beyond with overseas campuses and so on and so forth. Because all of the service features are there regardless of size, it's simply a matter of scale and cost as you grow. The service is based on IT service management best practice. It will have a proper definition of incident, service request, change, all those things that we know and love about ITIL, and hopefully that comes out in the service definitions. Perhaps most importantly, it's backed by service levels. We all talk about service levels and have done for a long time, but the key thing in all of the service definitions that you'll see, the documents are actually called service level agreements. They define what the service will and won't do, and we are including, we're including service levels on availability, performance, incident resolution, service request fulfillment, the service you should be receiving. And following on from that will be monitoring, reporting and management of how we're doing against those service levels. It's plug and play, so our intention is that although we will offer support and you can make use of that support in a variety of different ways, the service, when the virtual machines and the software appears, it's ready for you to use. You may need to do configuration to connect it to other systems, but if you're capable and willing, you can set it up and run with it. The service is likely to move to annual cost only, so it becomes essentially a subscription type model that there's a cost per year of subscribing to the service without a setup charge to cover all of this bespoke work that has to happen to get it up and running. It's a service because Bloom software is standard, service is standard, it's up and running. We all know what you're getting. But on the flip side, we have extensive support that you can make use of if you need, want, desire more help. Clifton referred to this, and this has been one of the, perhaps the hardest part of the whole service definition piece of work, is to find the balance between flexibility of Moodle as an open source toolkit for teaching and learning and being a vendor, a supplier who wants to provide assurances and service levels and quality and so on. We feel we found the fairly thin line between those two that is both manageable for us, works for you, affordable, and so on and so forth. So that's probably the subject of a whole blog post and probably a whole discussion in and of itself, but I'm happy to take questions on what that might mean. The Bloom range of services is the big overview table. That's the current proposed range. It may expand, particularly as we add more partner products of the likes of Mahara, Aquella, Echo 360 and so on. That will expand the list of services. Services are distinct and separate, i.e. we've tried to break things down so that they are conceptual services in their own right. Most of them, they go along with the Bloom service. So things like having a out of hours cover doesn't make sense on its own. It's Bloom service and then we choose to have out of hours cover service as well. So that principle works all the way through. As I said before, it's a menu of services available to all regardless of size, not proposing any restrictions other than there'll be a suitable price for each service and it's up to you. The Bloom range of services provides enterprise level assurances if required. There's a whole section of services that this audience is probably the audience to which that's of most interest. So disaster recovery, out of hours, etc., etc. The Bloom range. Sorry? Of course, backups. I think we are saying that's part of the standard service. With and Richard's had a go at defining what we mean by that, and I think I put something in the latest version of the actual SLA. The Bloom range of service allows for extensive customization if desired, and again, we're trying to be very clear about what that means. You can do it, but here's the consequences of doing it, and the choice becomes yours as to which path you want to go down. Bloom range of services, it combines with our partners to create a teaching and learning platform. It's more than just Moodle. Mahara might be something you all, or many of you have that service along with Moodle, but there are others, some mentioned there, and almost certainly more to come. It will also include, which isn't in any of the documentation so far, but suite of professional services. So things that we can do and you, I hope, will look to coming to us to do, including training, development of plugins and the like, user interface design, implementation, pedagogical advice. There's a whole list of experience that we can offer to you, and we plan to provide a similarly professional basis on which they will work. So we tell you how to access a professional service, define it with statements of work, and so on and so forth, to make that a clear, workable operation, giving you the same clarity and understanding of what you will get. And finally, the range of services being prepared so that we can start to deliver them to customers at the start of next academic year. So we have a lot to do. As I say, there are 40 services on the list at the moment. We've produced draft SLAs to cover, I think, 10 of those. We've produced final SLAs to cover 8 of those, I believe. So we're gradually working through the key ones, i.e. Bloom, Support Plus, Private Theme is the other. That covers a large proportion of our customer base. So we focused on getting those to a finalised state where we can then look to our internal teams and say, what do we need to have in place so that we can deliver these to customers in September? That's it from me. So questions I'm happy to take at detailed level or high level of what's this all about. Up to you.
Have a think, there's no rush.
And clearly there's a lot, for those of you who've seen and read the documents, there's a lot to take in there.
I think that pre-production sounds quite interesting. Your
Right.
Moodle space. Would that be available next year, 2014, 15?
Yeah, so at the moment we have at least a handful of customers who have they might call it a UAT service or a pre-production service, but they have another Moodle environment on which they preview in some way things before they go to live. It's not defined as well as we would like it to be, hence it's in the list of things here to give the same treatment, but it's a common request certainly at the HE level, that you're potentially making big changes or we're introducing big changes and you want the ability to see what that's going to be like on an equivalent environment to production. So you might be looking at how's it going to perform, those kind of things. But there's quite a lot behind that. It's not just another server with a lump of software on. It's service about what will we do to give you a pre-production service. So there are likely to be things in there such as any change we make, whether to configuration or to code, we will agree to make it to the pre-production environment first before we make it to live. So we're essentially doing work twice, but for a good reason, which is to give you that visibility. So again, there's a lot to define, and to date, where we have offered a service like that, it hasn't had the benefit of that definition, but certainly it's something we get quite a lot of inquiries about. And obviously upgrades, where people want extended preview visibility of an upgrade, something like a pre-production service starts to open up those possibilities.
For us, for testing the integration, that would be...
Absolutely, that's another one.
You have here an archive service for 3 years. We might need 5 or 6. Is that doable?
Yeah, the archive server is it was a tricky one because, as I've outlined this principle of services rather than servers, an archive service whereby you, at some point in time, you siphon off the year's content and put it on a read-only Moodle service so that last year's students can access the previous content. That's a tricky one because obviously people do want to have multiple years going back different degrees, but we don't want hardware increases as you add more years content. So the solution we came up with was saying there are actually multiple service. So archive service brackets 1 is a service that enables you to store 1 year's content and serve it in a read-only mode. Archive service 2 allows you to serve 2 years. So in that model, you'd probably actually be subscribing to archive service 1 for a first year, and then changing that subscription to archive service 2. That might sound over the top, but it allows those principles to be kept and to be clear. But in answer to your question, I put 1, 2, 3 to demonstrate the principle. If there's a demand and desire to go 5, 6, 7, I don't see it breaks anything. I think it's just a question of, is there sufficient desire to do that? But principle works.
Goes on to the next question. What about the underlying operating service, PHP, MySQL stuff that would be full of security holes 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road?
Exactly, and that may well be one of the. I wouldn't say we've answered the question as to how far back we will go. At the moment, we've said 1, 2, 3 because we feel just about confident that we could cope with those kind of issues. Going to 5, 6, 7, we'd have to question that a bit more. But as I say, I don't think we've made a decision on. But your point is absolutely valid.
No, I mean, we've been thinking about, we don't know the answer.
No. It might be one that's solved by. It may have to be that if we go to 4, 5, 6, 7, the price needs to include time to either patch those security holes ourselves or to reflect that there's more and more work, and then the decision comes down to how far you want to take that. Emily's got a point.
Emily, the people remotely won't be able to hear you at all. Do you want to come over? Sorry. The voice from the back.
I was just going to ask Michael whether or not he actually, the sort of questions he needs to ask is, what kind of access do you need as well? Because archive can mean multiple things. Do you need to have that instant access, or is it something that you would need to maybe call up? So, you know, it would be something that is available. So I know we've had conversations about the archive and, you know, other bits, other services that we are looking at offer and we partner with, where it might be something that is packaged up. It's not accessible, but can be brought back up on demand. So there's other, I mean, I just thought I'd mention that just as an idea, because I think those are the kind of questions that we can model services on saying, okay, an archive service, but what do you mean by an archive? Is it instant access? Is it something that can be, say, within 2 weeks we bring you the access to that material? What kind of material? Is it the whole Moodle site, or is it just the course? So, you know, there's different flavours. So I just thought I'd mention that because, you know, those are the kind of things that, in fact, I don't think we've got many services that have gone past the 3 or 4 year in terms of HE. So they're quite important questions to ask about what you need legally and what you need in terms of just as a general archive, and what UCC can offer. So that's my 2 pennies worth.
Just gone again. That's Clifton.
What's the timeline? I might have missed
something. Quite possibly not, but we want to be in a position that at the very least we could sign new customers on this basis. So we've got quite a lot of work to do in new monitoring, developments of the Bloom software to create the plugins and things that we want to be in there, processes around our incident management, all those kind of things. We actually got quite a bit of work to do to confidently say we're now in a position to deliver this. John Hilton, who talked at the last one, will be having conversations in due course with customers about their specific plan to transition to this. But
one of the things I think on budget for next year, so any budget for implications.
Clifton's concerned about budgets for next year.
of course,
For the people out there who can't hear.
yeah. I mean, my main concern, and I think shared by ULCC, is that we would like to see us delivering these services as soon as possible, and the benefits of the clarity for us and for you will be more apparent than doing anything with prices. So that's our number one focus, and that's about as far as I think any decisions have been made. But I would love to see everybody on these converted to whichever of these map closely to your needs as soon as possible.
Right. Any other questions? This is your opportunity. They're still kind of working on them a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got the key ones to a point where we're comfortable enough that we could go forth and deliver them, but they could still evolve. The more feedback, the better. Whether here, come talk to us individually, phone us up, put it through the service desk, comment on the blog, whatever works. The more the better.
So, we seem to be at the end of the agenda, Frank. Which is good. It's quite cold in here. Hopefully people in their offices listening remotely are warmer. Are there any final points or questions? Obviously we are very keen for you to fill in the evaluation form so we can think about planning the next meetings. I appear still to be chairing this group, which is fine, but it was up for grabs at the last meeting, so if that's all right with everyone. I'm still here.
Clifton looked keen.
You're doing a great job.
Did you want to talk about anything else?
No, I just wanted to mention, Sarah briefly alluded to the fact that we'd like to get your views. I mean, obviously on the session today, but generally, are you happy with the termly, every 3 or 4 months meeting? Should we have less, but maybe a bit longer? And I sort of want to put that out to you guys to have a think and maybe use the GISMIR list to discuss, or the feedback forms to let us know, because we sort of, I mean, we're happy either way, but I'm starting to think it might be better to have fewer but longer meetings, because it gives us time to prepare more, actually have more to tell you about, and also get more of you to tell us what you've been up to. So it's just something I want to put out there for you to have a think. So
we're aware that obviously your ULCC customers come from further than just London, so it's fine for us to just walk across the road, literally. But then at the same time, these meetings I think are really valuable. It's our opportunity to question our service providers, and not many other service providers offer. Okay.
Everybody's happy?
No one's allowed to leave the room until this is done. And there's tea, coffee and biscuits, I think, at the back to help with the process.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.